Hi, welcome back to the recap room. In today's video, we're going to be talking about a movie titled Unbroken, based on the real-life story of the American war prisoner Louis Samperini. Before we go ahead, please be warned, this video contains spoilers. The movie starts with an American jet during World War II flown by Louis Samperini and his subordinates. They are high above the Japanese lands and start dropping bombs on Louis' orders. On their way back to America, however, they are attacked by a Japanese fighter jet. Louis finds that they have another problem on hand when the doors of their jet get stuck. Deciding to close the door himself, he jumps toward them and starts pulling. The Japanese jet starts firing at Louis, but he manages to hide and dodge their bullets. However, their jet still sustains a large amount of damage, and Phil tells Louis that with the damage sustained, the brakes have failed to work, and their base is still 5 hours away. They finally manage to reach the base, but have to crash land, due to which the tires start screeching on the runway. The scenes then shift and we see a young Louis running away from a police officer. As a child, he was a troublemaker and starts to heavily drink and smoke at an early age. He also gets into a habit of stealing. Due to this, Louis does not have many friends and struggles to fit in. He's bullied by another American boys because of his Italian heritage, and although he tries to fight them off, they manage to circle him and beat him up. A police officer catches Louis and escorts him back home. He knocks on the door and is greeted by Louis' mother. He tells her that Louis was caught picking a fight with other children and drinking. His father is disappointed with Louis' behavior and wants him to change his ways. Not listening to his father, Louis continues to drink and smoke. He hides behind the bleachers during a baseball game and starts to drink. To avoid getting caught, Louis runs away. His brother watches as he makes a beeline towards the edge of the field. He immediately gets impressed by the speed at which Louis is running and asks him to become a runner and use his speed and talent towards a good cause. When Louis disagrees with Pete, saying he doesn't feel like he will do a good job, Pete tells him that if he does not make something of his life, he will end up in the street begging. After receiving encouragement from his brother, Louis starts to train and begins to compete in races, and over the years, he manages to become one of the top runners in his school, winning multiple races. Louis is once again encouraged by Pete, and so on he wins the race again. He successfully completes the 1-mile run in 4 minutes and sets a new record for high school students. For being such a successful runner at a young age, Louis is invited to compete in the Olympics representing America. In 1936, Louis gets ready to depart for the Olympics. He asks his brother Pete to come with him to the Olympics, but he refuses and tells him that he knows Louis will not be winning. Louis says he knows that he won't be winning, but will show the world his potential in the next Olympics in Tokyo 1940. Once he reaches Berlin for the Olympics, he participates in a 5,000-meter race, while his friends and family anxiously sit by the radio to see what will happen. The race begins, and all the athletes start running. As expected, Louis gets left behind as the runners get ahead of him. In the last lap, however, Louis begins running faster, leaving behind many competitors. And although he does not win a medal, he sets a new world record by completing the last lap in 55 seconds. This motivates him to work harder and win a medal for his country. Before Louis can achieve his dream, World War II starts and the 1940 Olympics in Japan gets cancelled. Back to the present, after they land the plane, one of the pilots, Phil, begins praying. Louis, who is not very religious, does not understand Phil's faith and the need to pray. Louis does not lose his passion for running and continues to train, even with minimal equipment available. He runs alongside a jeep and manages to beat his existing records. Soon after, Louis and his subordinates are told that they will go on a rescue mission. They are told that the plane is made from spare parts and they may have to be careful with it. In mid-air, one of the plane's engines fails and starts to smoke. Making the best of the situation, the team tries to stay calm. However, another engine fails as well, causing everyone to panic. Everyone braces themselves for the crash landing, and the plane plunges into the ocean. Quickly filling with water and breaking in half. Louis, Phil and Mag become the lone survivors of the crash, and they quickly get up onto inflatable rafts. Phil sustains an injury due to the crash, and Louis tends to him. Although everyone feels helpless, Mac begins to panic and tells the others that the chances of them getting rescued are slim, considering they are in the middle of nowhere and there is a war going on. Phil and Louis try to make him feel better and tell Mac that someone will come for them. Louis finds a few packs of chocolate and some clean drinking water. He tells Mac and Phil that they will be rationing it since they don't know how long they will have to spend in the ocean before they are rescued. He tells them that they will only drink 2 sips of water a day and 1 bite of chocolate in the morning and 1 at night. That night, everyone falls asleep. When they wake up the next morning, they hear a plane overhead and try to send a signal by firing a flare gun and throwing dye in the water, but the plane fails to notice them. Feeling disheartened, Louis checks the chocolate boxes only to find them empty. He discovers that Mac had eaten all the chocolate at night. Louis becomes livid and throws the empty boxes at Mac and begins shouting at him because now they had no food and no sign of anyone coming to rescue them. Over the next few days, the 3 spend their days waiting for a rescue plane, without any food or water. One day, a seagull lands on their inflatable boat. Without thinking too much about it, they grab the seagull and eat it raw. However, their condition worsens as their stomachs are not able to handle it and they throw up the next day. Still desperate and hungry, they try to use the remains of a seagull as bait and catch fish. They eat the fish raw as well, but this time around, their stomach handles the raw meat. They celebrate the small win, but it is hard to remain happy for long when the harsh reality comes crashing down on them that night. As everyone goes to sleep, there is a storm and there are dangerous waves, making the team believe that they won't survive. A scared Louis prays to God to save them. The next day, the storm subsides and the water comes down. Phil notices a plane, and once again, they try to catch its attention by firing a flare gun. Just as they think that this plane hasn't noticed them, the plane makes a turn and begins to fly towards them. Their happiness is short-lived because they recognize the plane to be a Japanese plane. The Japanese start shooting at them and the boys scramble to get off the boat and underwater to take shelter from the bullets. Once they emerge from the water, they find the plane gone, and to their horror, their boats are damaged. They manage to somehow salvage one of the boats, and all 3 of them try to fit into the tiny boat. After 35 days in the ocean, Mac falls sick and his condition takes a turn for the worst, and he dies. Although they are alive, they fall sick as well. They wrap Mac's body up and begin to lose hope. On day 37, Phil and Louis wake up to find a huge Japanese boat in front of them, with guns pointed at them. They are taken as prisoners of war and are kept on an island without any food or water for days. One day, Louis is brought to a Japanese colonel's tent. The colonel recognizes Louis from a newspaper clipping and knows that he is an Olympic athlete. They extract information from him and then ship him off to another prison camp in Tokyo. There are many prisoners with Louis and Phil, and all of them are blindfolded. Louis and Phil are separated. The commanding officer there, Matsuhiro Watanabe, is cruel. He tells the prisoners that they are enemies of the Japanese and will be treated as such. Louis glances at Watanabe, who catches his eye, mocks him, and tells him to look him in the eye. When Louis makes eye contact, he's beaten up with a stick until he begins to bleed. Later that night, the other prisoners tell Louis that they call Watanabe Birdie. The next day, as the prisoners are made to bow for Watanabe, he tells them that there is a talented athlete among them. He signals Louis out and tells him to race against a Japanese soldier. However, due to the below-average conditions Louis has been in, he falls to the ground and loses the race. Watanabe beats Louis with a wooden stick until his whole body is bruised. The prisoners steal newspapers from the Japanese to keep track of the war and to keep their morale up that they will win the war. One of the prisoners draws a map to keep track of the country's position. The prisoners decide amongst themselves that they will not help the enemy no matter what kind of torture they are subjected to. Over the few days, the prisoners are subjected to hard manual labor. One day, Watanabe decides to search the prisoners' barracks and crumbs across the map. He beats the prisoner who threw it while everyone watches helplessly. Louis decides after the incident that he will kill Watanabe, but other prisoners warn him against it and tell him that he will be killed and that they need to survive. When America attacks Japanese land, two men from Radio Tokyo come and get Louis and tell him to inform his family that he is alive and that he's being kept well at the prison camp. A few days later, the same man approaches him and tells Louis to follow a script, but Louis refuses, saying that the script is full of lies and does not budge even when they offer to take him out of the prison camp. When he returns, Watanabe asks his fellow prisoners to beat him and teach him about respect. When they hesitate, prisoners are subjected to torture, so Louis urges them to punch him. By the time each prisoner punches him, it is sundown. One day, Watanabe sits next to Louis and tells him that he is soon leaving for another camp. A few days later, their prison camp is attacked by the Allies and all of the prisoners are transferred to another prison, where the conditions seem far worse. Much to Louis' horror, Watanabe is at this camp, and once he sees Louis, he dares him to make eye contact. When Louis doesn't, Watanabe beats him up. The work at the camp is to load coal on ships. One day, Louis is pushed from behind and he falls, breaking his leg. Again, a few days later, Louis stops to rest when Watanabe takes him in front of a pile of logs and asks him to pick one over his head. Louis picks it up and lifts it. Watanabe asks another soldier to shoot Louis if he drops the log. Louis not only lifts the log, but manages to keep holding onto it despite the exhaustion that he feels. He stares into Watanabe's eyes and lifts the logs even higher, which annoys Watanabe, and he beats Louis up again and leaves him outside for a whole day. A few days later, the prisoners are told that the war has finally ended, and to award them, they allow the prisoners to wash off in the river. However, they think that they are going to get killed, but when they see an American fighter jet above their heads, they begin to rejoice. Soon, help arrives. Louis goes to Watanabe's cabin but finds Watanabe gone, with only a picture of him with his father remaining. Back home, Louis kisses the ground and meets his family. Louis later got married and had a son and a daughter. He went to Japan to find everyone who was involved in his capture, but ended up forgiving everyone. And although he was not able to participate in an Olympic game, he did carry an Olympic torch at the age of 80 in Tokyo. And that was it for the recap, guys. Make sure to like and subscribe. Don't forget to hit the notification bell as well so that you don't miss any of our uploads. Thank you for watching.